Okay, so I'll say that again. Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today for our webinar on why members don't renew and how to fix this. I'm just going to start off with a couple of introductions from the CompuCo team. So my name is Louise, and I am the Chief Growth Officer, which means I'm working with all of our potential clients and existing clients to understand their needs and to see how we can help them find the right solutions for their organization. I'm going to hand over now to Alex.
Yeah, hi, I'm Alex. I'm the marketing manager here at CompuCo. I do a lot of communication and I'm going to be presenting a lot of what we're doing today, so you can hear me speak a lot. I'll hand over to Jack now.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you all. I'm Jack McIndoe. I'm one of the account managers at CompuCo. So I report directly into Louise, and I'm responsible for helping any of our kind of new clients with any questions, demonstrations, and support throughout the process, really. Over to you, Hamish.
Cool. Yeah, so lastly, hi, I'm Hamish. I'm a project manager here at CompuCo, so I'm much more on the sort of like client management end and sort of technical management of Civi. I spend my time running projects for clients and actually working on the sort of build and implementation of Civi. So yeah, let me know if there are any questions about the sort of more detailed stuff.
Thank you, Hamish. So before we get started, I just want to tell you a little bit about who we are. So our mission at CompuCo is to empower socially responsible organizations with the digital tools that they need to build a better world. So what does this mean? This means that we are only working with not-for-profit and charitable organizations. So we really do have the right focus and expertise to help them succeed digitally. And how do we do this? So one of the ways that we do, on the next slide you can see here, is through using Civi CRM. So as you can see, it is the #1 open source CRM for the nonprofit sector. And it's been around since 2005. So it's a really well-established product and is used by over 11,000 organizations. It's downloaded 700 times a month and has already been translated into 40 languages. And Civi is the benchmark that we're going to use throughout this presentation to showcase just how much a powerful CRM can really impact your membership retention. And here's just a few examples of some of the amazing clients who we've worked with across the arts, education, government, membership and trade associations, and also fundraising and charitable areas. And some of them are even here with us today. So we're really delighted to have you joining us. And of course, welcoming new faces as well. So now, without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Alex, who's going to talk to us all about why members don't renew.
Yes, thanks, Louise. Let's get into the kind of meat and potatoes of what we're discussing today. Why members don't renew. Let's start with the problems first. So we're going to talk today about the top preventable reasons. There are so many reasons we could list why members might not renew, but we want to kind of start with things that we can affect more and that are actually kind of the biggest issues out there. So we've taken some statistics here from MGI. They asked membership professionals what they thought were the top 3 reasons that members didn't renew. And so we're going to be presenting some of that and taking the top 3 reasons that they said and focusing on them today. So the top reason that they said was lack of engagement, which is probably something lots of you are already thinking about. Membership organizations, member engagement, very big theme. For people who worked with individuals, as in they have individual members as part of their organization, this was a massive theme. 48% of these membership professionals put it in the top 3 reasons. It was even bigger amongst those organizations, those membership professionals who work with organizations. So with trade, it was 60%. So these are things that really we want to be thinking about here. The second reason was lack of value. And as you can see, that was fairly consistent across both types of professionals, but high 30s, really important reason. And we'll be going into what we exactly mean by lack of value here, because it's not necessarily that membership organizations aren't offering enough. And then the final one, the one that's very painful, is that people forget to renew. And as you can see, that is a very high number for individuals. But even with the trade, that's still pretty high. And so, yeah, that's something that you probably want to start thinking about, and we're discussing some quick fixes for. But there are some other reasons, and we'll be talking about this one a little bit towards the end, although it is covered mostly within these three. If, say, the employer won't pay or to stop paying the dues, this sometimes is a reason if the employer pays for the membership. And then something that we're not really going to dwell on because there's not much you can do about it is if a person retires, leaves the field, the company closes. It's kind of one of those things you just have to accept, sadly, and we're better focusing on the things we can actually affect. But let's start by discussing the actual problems and what we actually mean by each of them. So we'll start with engagement. What's the lack of engagement problem? Well, number one is that members don't hear enough from you, or at least they don't feel they hear enough from you. And this kind of theme of how members feel and what they perceive is something that we'll be repeating a little bit here, because sometimes we need to realize that it's what our members have in their reality that's important rather than how we see it, or maybe even what our statistics say. And maybe they're just not receiving a personalized experience. Maybe membership organizations are delivering a one-size-fits-all approach here. Maybe they're not sending tailored content to specific people. Maybe it's not relevant to everyone. We'll be discussing how you can do that a bit later. And maybe you're just not appearing on all the channels that people check. So if you're focusing entirely on email, then maybe everyone's not on email, or they don't check their emails regularly enough. So that might be something you need to think about. What about lack of value? What's the problem here? Well, as I alluded to, maybe the real problem is there's a lack of perceived value. It might not be that you don't offer enough value. I'm sure as membership organizations, you all offer a tremendous amount of value, but it might just be it's not being communicated effectively enough with your members. And that could be for reasons like maybe that your expectations of the membership might not be the same as what you think you're delivering to them. And so we're thinking about how you can tackle that. And also possibly your membership options just aren't tailored enough. Maybe you do have one or maybe two membership types, and you could think about diversifying that a little bit more. And finally, if we are talking about value, there's clearly always extra things that people can do. So what more possibly could we be doing to add that value? The final topic that we're going to be focusing here is what about people who are forgetting to renew? How can we tackle that? And what's the issues there? Well, number one, honestly, if you're having to manually remind everyone by email or however you're doing it, that takes up an inordinate amount of time. And I'm sure everyone's familiar with that. If they've ever tried to send lots of emails, you have to keep track of who has already paid, who hasn't paid. One email's fine, but if you're sending multiple, it gets really, really difficult. So how do we stop it just being so labor intensive? And maybe, yeah, you're just reaching out, as we've already said, in just too few channels. You're just focusing in on email or phone and you want to diversify. Possibly members are asked too late. Have a think about, and we'll be getting back to this with some statistics later. When do you actually ask your members to renew? Because that's a really important thing to think about. And finally, payment processes are just too complicated sometimes. We've seen a variety of different things, and we'll be talking a little bit about that later. But if it's not simple to do there and then on the spot, then maybe members are just going to delay, think I'll do it later, and then inevitably forget, especially if you compound it with some of the other things here. So with all that being said, now we've kind of had a think about some of the issues and looked at some of the problems we have. Let's look at how to fix this, the exciting part of the webinar. What can we do? So lack of engagement, first topic. Before we get into some of the quick fixes, we're going to have a look at how many people actually have a plan. And apparently 30% of membership organizations don't even have an engagement plan, which is quite a large number of membership organizations. And coming up with a plan is really useful because number one, you'll have to think about what you're doing already. So clearly, if you're one of those membership organizations, probably our top recommendation here would be create a plan. What are you doing and what could you do? And as Louise said, lots of what we're going to talk about today is focusing around how some very simple things that you can do with a CRM database, just because it's a tool that many organizations have, or many organizations would probably look to have. And, there's so many different tools you could buy out on the market, but we're trying to keep it simple and achievable for everyone here. First thing we're going to talk about briefly is email newsletters. So Most of you might already do one of these. And if you don't, first question is, how often should you run it? Well, we'd say start off with monthly or bi-monthly. Don't do it less frequently because your members won't be kind of reminded of you often enough. You want to keep yourself in their mind. You want to make it regular and expected. But if you do it too frequently at first, weekly, then, well, there's the chance, A, you might annoy your members, but also B, you just won't have enough content to cover. And in terms of the content, how do we make that easy for ourselves? Well, the type of content that we want to put in it is the stuff you'll be doing elsewhere. So how can you repurpose what you're doing elsewhere? That means news, blog posts, events. Don't reinvent the wheel for your newsletter. You want to be using it as a channel to send stuff out, not as a kind of its own individual thing. But something else really important that you want to be doing here is you want to be telling people about the benefits your membership offers. So what is it that people can get out of it? And tell them about a little piece of that each month, perhaps. And that way you're reminding them of the things they can do with you. And this is kind of touching on the value theme. We'll be talking a bit about this more later. But this is something you want to be keeping on doing. You know what you deliver. Your members might not, or they might forget. Structure is clearly vital for newsletters as well. So make sure you're using templates just because it gives you a consistent, coherent look. It doesn't look different every month, which can be a bit jarring for members. It's also much easier for all you have to do is change some of the words. And as part of this, you want to be including your value proposition. So again, not just the benefits, but what do you stand for? Why is it that people have joined your organization? Also really important to highlight here is put your most important message first. Don't put it at the bottom. People don't always scroll down on emails. Shocking, I know. But if you put the top thing, the thing that you really want people to remember at the top of the email is the most chance of being read. And as part of this, have a clear call to action. Maybe that's a button to click on, but whatever it is, think of what are you trying to achieve in the email, and make sure it's clear and obvious to the reader. Don't bury it, because that's what you want to achieve from that. Next up in engagement, we're going to talk a little about events. Now, you could do a whole separate webinar on this, so we're not going to get too into it, but really important thing, events, because they connect your members with each other and also with your team. So they really create a sense of community and put faces to names rather than everyone just being kind of connected digitally, or however you do it in a very analog way. As part of this, you can do either webinars, in-person events, so many different variations. That's again, separate webinar really. But we'd recommend start simple, start with something that something you're more confident with. Your membership organization probably has some kind of cause that they support, and really focus in on that and promote that as much as you can. Don't reinvent the wheel, and get feedback. Ask people how it went. Ask people, what they thought. Is there something extra they do? If you're new to this, really just talk to your audience and ask your members what they want from these events. And as part of event management, anyone who's run an event will know the most difficult thing is logistics and the organization and getting all the pieces together. So you really want a really good centralized event management platform where you can communicate with the people who are signed up, see who's signed up. You can look at reports of who signed up afterwards. And something really important here as well is follow-up. So often people will just attend an event and no follow-up is done. But you might want to say, send a survey or think of some different way to engage them in the future. And we'll be getting into that a little bit when we talk about personalized communications, which is the next thing. How do we personalize people's communications? Because we only have a limited amount of time, clearly. The first step is to segment your audience, which many organizations do. And here's some suggestions you might do it. So as part of this, geography is a key one, clearly. If you are an organization that works all throughout the UK and you're, say, running an event in Scotland, you probably don't want to be sending that to your London members. You might, but they're probably unlikely to go if it's in person. And so you want to be thinking, how can I send people relevant messages? And as we said, maybe you could do this from previous event attendance. And so this is something that you can do super easily with personalized communications. You can add tokens to emails with things like CRM or a good email builder, which basically lets you send out these automated emails, but sub in bits of key information. So for instance, first name, job title, you can just put a little token in there, and your database can automatically insert that into the email. So it looks personalized, it will feel personalized, but you don't manually have to write out every single email, which is not sustainable. And yeah, the key point here is it doesn't need to be time consuming, and it really shouldn't be. If you're doing this right, it probably is going to take you as much time as your current blanket emails. And it's certainly going to be a considerable amount faster than if you're sending really actually manually personalized emails. And as a final theme here for engagement, let's look at how you can make your content easier to find, because maybe it's just your content's out there, you have a great amount, you're trying to communicate it, but people just don't see it. So where do your members actually look? You're probably thinking, well, they look at my website clearly. If you send out emails, you'd hope they look at that. Social media, which social media are you on? Are you on all the social media they're on? You probably use one or two, but could you make better use of that? So can you make use of other channels is a key question to ask yourself. Maybe there's something really specific to your sector where people are that you might want to start thinking about promoting yourself. And as part of this, analyze your channel engagement so you can get fully into analytics mode. Just for social media, say, it's very simple. You can just say how many likes and shares you get on your post, for instance. So that can keep it quite simple and is a nice place to start. Maybe you see Facebook's a more popular platform for you. And another thing worth saying here is you can have a look at cross-channel engagement. And I'm not going to get into Google Analytics, that's quite complicated. But just to say, if people are on your social media and then going to your website, that's a good thing to know about. Why do people visit your website? How do they get between your channels? And something maybe a bit more advanced to think about, but a good one nonetheless. And another thing with making your content easier to find is you could have a member portal. Some of you might already have this, some of you might not. What is a member portal? Good question. Well, it's a self-service area where it can serve as an extra channel to highlight important content to your members. Members can do things like signing up for events. They can check on invoices. It saves time. And you might be thinking, well, the self-service area, it sounds really great. The amount of time that you could save if people don't have to email me every time they have a query, if it's something they can address themselves, but that just sounds too complicated. That's going to take a long time to set up. Actually, if you get a CRM which supports it, it can be super simple because it just pulls all of the members' information straight out of the database and presents it back to them. So super easy actually, and can make a really big impact in terms of how engaged your members are and how easy they find to interact with you without having to spend more time. Next up, now we've talked a bit about engagement, let's talk about lack of value, or as we've already said, lack of perceived value, we'll start off with. Now, we want to start by understanding our members. If our members feel like they don't get enough value from us, why is that? What is it they're actually looking at?
You can't go out.
So the first thing to talk about is you can run some reports in your database, and you can look at various topics like those in the screen, but have a think about what trends you might want to analyze. Maybe people just aren't signing up to things. Maybe they're more engaged with one specific area. And then you can do all this kind of quantitative analysis in your database. But another way you could do it, especially if you don't have the history, you can collect feedback and just ask people directly. You can use digital surveys as you can do it to your membership, or you could also use something like Google Survey to do it to a broader audience. And a really good thing you could do here is if you know there's a lot of members who never do anything with you, who don't open your emails, who don't attend any of your events, you can reach out to them specifically and ask them, what could we be doing to engage you more? And that's a really useful thing and a really helpful thing that might get people back on board and give you key insights that can really promote future growth and renewal. Next point is, what can we do to convey value everywhere? Because this is something that people often don't think about enough, because as organizations, it's very easy to get stuck in our own head. We know what we stand for. We know why we do what we do. It's clear, but it's not always clear to our members or clients. So you want to be repeating your messaging constantly, because remember, your members will not read every single piece of communication you put out. That's probably why you've got to try so many different channels. And so remind them constantly what you stand for, what your values are, what your value is to them. And as part of this, also remind them of the benefits you provide. We've said it already, but I'm repeating it because it's worth saying. Keep on reminding them the benefits they'll get. And so as part of this, you want to be creating stories about your members. Think about the stories you can tell. And this is something that you might more traditionally think of as referred to as case studies, but you can make these really personalized real world stories about your members. And that's just so much more powerful. If you connect it to a real life person, then this is a list of our perks. That's nice, people can, but they have to imagine more to get there. Whereas if they hear so-and-so from so-and-so has used it this way, that, especially if you can get in video, that's fantastic. And really here, it's worth noting, get diverse perspectives. And what I mean here isn't just the usual diversity. I mean a diverse range of services that you offer and a mix and match. You might have one amazing service that everyone uses, and that's great. You can tell stories about that. But if you're only talking about that, then people are going to think that's maybe the only thing you offer, or maybe your other services just aren't as strong. So really focus on the spread of the things you tell stories about. And talking about diversifying things, we'll talk about diversifying membership types. So really good if you can try to experiment with different membership types here. You might want to have a tier system. So maybe members on different levels, and you might already have one of these, but maybe there's more you could do with it. Could also think about loyalty rewards. Someone's been there 2, 3, 4, 5 years. You might want to treat them a bit differently. You might want to make them feel more valued. But what does this mean in practice? Let's give some real examples here. Well, a classic one is the student membership. Students are well known for being a bit broke. They don't have much money. So you might want to offer them a cheaper option. Probably not the full membership. They might not need all of your services yet. So you make them a slightly cheaper introductory membership. And that's a good approach to go. Maybe there are certain types of members who just don't need everything. If you don't have that type of membership and you think there's possibly room for it, that's a really good one to explore. And another thing that we see quite commonly with our clients is perhaps offer exclusive access to certain events. So you can set this up on an event management platform so that only your members or specific types of members can sign up to certain events. Maybe it's you have to pay to have access to that if you run a specific training session or something of that like. Of course, if we're talking about value, as I've already said, we do have to talk about what extra everyone could be doing, because there's always more we could all do. We only have a limited amount of resources, so we don't want to go too mental here, and that's why we're talking about it last. But a good place to start here is, again, seeking feedback. What is it that your members would value most? Maybe draw up a list and then ask them, what would they most like you to do? And also ask for feedback afterwards to make sure what you're delivering is what they expected you to deliver. Again, making sure that you align their expectations. But some examples that we could do, just if we take, say, what you can do with a database. You could deliver training courses. We see lots of our clients doing this, and L&D seems to be a growing theme within membership at the moment. So think about what you could do. This is basically an event, and you're just, you can repeat the content actually a lot, because you get lots and lots of different people doing the same content again and again. So once you've got it written out, it can be super easy to do for you. You could also do mentoring, which honestly is just connecting to people and maybe monitoring it a little bit. It's really high value for the people who engage in it. They really enjoy it, but it's not actually too much work. You could have a membership directory. And this is a great little feature, which you could even charge extra to your members for. And if it's appropriate for your membership, you can obviously want to probably give them an opt-in or opt-out. But you can say, if you're an organization with lots of organizations within it, they can see the different organizations, or just find different members, and if it's an appropriate thing to do within your organization. You can offer exclusive discounts. Maybe you have different partners you could work with who make sense within your structure, and you could have exclusive discounts and offer them, and that would be something that you could organize, again, through the database. And something else that many of our clients do, at least the trade union ones, I should say, mostly, is offer insurance. And that's a really good extra thing you can do that you might consider if you're some kind of body within the industry. But that's probably more specific. Now, let's get on to the really painful one, what to do if people forget to renew. How do we stop it being so labor intensive, stopping people forgetting? Well, the clear solution we'd suggest is automation. And funnily enough, only 28% of organizations automate non-payment tasks, which is quite shocking, really. We've got 72% of organizations who are relying on manual methods to ensure that they get paid by their members. And you would think that this would be the most important task, essentially, for any organization, to make sure that the revenue is coming in and they can continue to provide their services. And so there's a lot of room, I think, for improvement here, just because it's exceptionally easy to automate things like emails with a CRM. It saves considerable time, as we've already discussed with the personalization. You can do it so quickly, you can automate several emails. And at the end of the day, you still have control. You can say, I want this email to go out, or I don't. You can make it feel personalized. It's not an impersonal kind of whatever thing. And that makes it so much more effective that way. And you can create all sorts of rules around it. You can create rules, if they've already paid, you can create rules around the date. You send it a month before you send it, possibly if you have a grace period, some interval within that. You can really personalize the email with tokens further. What about easy and transparent payments? Because we mentioned there were some issues with payments, and members might delay and forget if it's too complex. I mean, one thing we always have to consider in the modern day is people on mobile, because lots of people might want to do this on the go nowadays. And we've seen membership organizations in the past who require you to download a Word document and fill it in and then send it back to do payments or renewals. And it's understandable why people start that way, but that's quite difficult on mobile. So you're really encouraging your member to forget and put it off, and, oh, Word document's annoying, so they just don't do it. What you want to be doing instead is providing somewhere that the member can make a quick online payment. They can put their details in, they can confirm the payment, and then it's put through. And that makes it so much easier for them, and they'll probably just do it on the spot. Another great thing you can have, again, as part of the member portal we discussed, you can have a place where they can check their invoices. Not only can they say if they paid it or if it's due, they can also download it, which is super useful if their employer pays for it, and so they can expense it rather than having to ask you to send it to them, or if there's an issue with it, they can see what the invoice is and then raise a specific query. It saves you considerable time that way. And not that I'm going to get too much into it, but another good way you can automate, which is something that a good database would support as well, is you can have direct debit set up. And that is a game changer in terms of what you can do, because that way you do not need to manually or kind of ask every single time. Now, that might not be appropriate for every organization, but if it could be, really strongly consider it. We've talked a bit about quite a lot about communications, but really what we want to be doing to stop people forgetting is being more proactive. How can we stop being reactive or just sending out kind of rote communications? Let's get ahead of the game. So I asked you earlier, when do you start asking for renewal? And that's a really good topic to think about. And we found from the research that we did that most professionals flag it up 3 months before. Now, as you can see, 4% are asking on the same month, which is a risky strategy. But we'd certainly recommend don't leave it that late. The earlier you ask, within reason, the better it will go, especially if you're having to manage lots of renewals at the same time, if you have a fixed membership renewal date. And key here is use different channels. Don't rely on one channel. Don't rely on just email. Here, you can use email, but you can also use text. Text is super easy to automate with something like a CRM. You can send out loads and loads of text. It's a different place. It will pop up. Maybe they read their phone for text. They just don't check their emails often enough. And not as many people use text anymore, which is probably, the reason we get some spam text occasionally nowadays. But member portals are a great place as well to put your announcements, as we discussed. If you have fixed membership, everyone's renewing at the same time. You want to be putting it on social media. You want to be putting it on your website. That's very important. And if you have the resources, you can do it on your phone. What about some bonus fixes? Now I've got through those topics, let's have a look at some of the things we said we were going to get back to. Well, what about the employers who won't pay? We think if you combine some of the stuff we've already talked about around engagement, around stopping people forgetting to renew, and around tackling that perceived lack of value, you'll be tackling a lot of this already. But what about some more specific stuff? Well, first of all, you want to be identifying your risks. And this is a super important point, because if it's 2% of your membership who have their employer pay for them, that's probably okay. If it's 80%, you really need to know about that, because that could really cause a lot of problems. And so you want to be creating messaging, if that's the case, to highlight the perks more and mitigate any of your risks. And as part of this, you really want to be thinking, how can I talk to the employers and the employees differently? Because they'll value different things. It's part of our segmentation thing. Maybe at the moment, or maybe in the past, you would have sent them all the same stuff. But if you send them slightly different things, really focusing on what they want and thinking from their perspective, you'll encourage the employer to keep on paying, because often we just think directly of the members, of the employees. And so, yes. And then a final point here is just don't write off lapsed renewals. And this is lapsed renewals, no one likes them, but sometimes it happens. And here, if it's the fact that the employer won't pay, it doesn't mean that they don't want to be a member still. It's just that they can't afford it, or that it's not being paid for anymore. You don't need to completely write them off. Keep engaging with them. They're not a member anymore. You don't need to treat them like that. But think of maybe there's some emails you can send or something that you can engage them with to entice them back, maybe when they move to their next employer. And there's other little things you could do here, like maybe an alumni tier membership, just something to make it a little bit easier to get their foot back in the door. Maybe give them access to your membership portal, or some little feature still, something very low value, just something that means that they're not a complete outsider. Another exciting thing, and this really feeds back into everything that we've talked about today, and we found a lot of fun with recently, is building a community. So as part of this, you can build your own social platform, which you have control over, because Facebook, some of the others, you don't have as much control. You can't customize it. You're stuck with their controls. What you could do instead, and several of our clients have, including CiviPlus, who recently launched their own membership community site at the Flood and Coast conference. They have these platforms where you can connect, you can network, you can post, engage with content, you can collaborate, share information. The fantastic platforms where you can just do an amazing amount of stuff. And the benefits that you get from them is that it solves all of our core renewal problems. They're a continuous engagement channel. They're somewhere that members can go and hang out. They can talk with other members. They can talk with a team. It's constant. It's not, relying on you sending out an email. It's easily perceived value. People can see it. It's high profile. It's somewhere that you can go and you can get insights into what your members want. They'll possibly be a little less guarded if they're talking to other people there, and it's more likely you'll get some responses than if you're trying to send out surveys just by themselves. And it's also very difficult to forget the connections that you made there, the relationships you're building, the friends you're making. It's also another channel for reminders. But what we want to encourage is the more people are invested and connected with one another, the better and easier it will be. So a key thing here is also that it's also an additional type of membership that you could add. So not all of our clients, but some of them might add this as an additional membership type that you can pay a little bit extra for, but that depends on what you're doing with it. But all that being said, that's where I'd like to hand back to Louise, who has a little bit more to say, but we've talked through quite a lot there, and hopefully there's quite a few useful tips. And certainly if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat and we'll get back to you in the end.
Thank you so much, Alex. So yeah, I just wanted to wrap up by telling you a little bit about CiviPlus, which is a new area of Civi CRM, which we have been working on and are very happy to introduce to you. So we, as we said earlier, have been working with Civi CRM for many years. And just now we are launching the most accessible version yet, CiviPlus. So we have taken all the very best features from around the world and across the Civi community and combined that with our CompuCo experience and expertise to give you the very best possible Civi CRM experience, all hosted on a secure cloud infrastructure. So basically what we've got is a package of a powerful, easy to use, all-in-one membership platform that can support everything that Alex has been talking about today. So what does CiviPlus do? What can it do? Well, it can do an awful lot of things. And we've got some highlights here, but I'm just going to touch upon a couple of them in a little bit more detail. So the number one area is, of course, managing your contacts. And I think, it's really important to be able to have a really clear overview of every single thing that an individual is engaged with and connected to within your organization, so that you can have what we call the single point of truth for that person. And CiviPlus lays that out in a really clear and easy to see way, which I'm going to show you a bit later on. And of course, you can manage your memberships within CiviPlus, and it's got a very sophisticated system where you can really track all the different types of tiers and option levels, the criteria involved, the automations between taking payments and the accounting integration you can see on the bottom line. So there's really, the system is built to do everything that we've talked about today. And additionally, also manage events, as we discussed, as an engagement tool, sending out mass emails and SMS texts if you choose to do so. Of course, if you also have fundraising within your organization, you can track all those opportunities too. And I also want to point out the surveys and petitions area. As Alex said, getting feedback is really important. And within CiviPlus, you can build a survey web form, have your members fill it in, and that information will be brought straight back into the CRM for you to analyze and then make the most of going forward. And of course, with everything else we're going to say again about our self-service portal, which we really feel gives you that extra level of value, an extra channel to engage with your members, and really think can make that difference in all of the things that we've talked about, so that, you know, encouraging people to always continue to renew. So what I'm going to do now is just give you a little first look at what CiviPlus actually looks like. So you can see here, we're very proud to have Mr. Tony Stark as a member of our organization. And, you know, this is his contact page. So you can see very clearly straight away everything about his direct contact information, where he works, his address, and all his personal details. You can also see on the top right, there are some tags for major donor and volunteer. So we can actually group people together and easily search for them based on those tags. But the key bit here is that left-hand tab, where we've got every other point of contact that we have related to Tony Stark within our organization. So we can see on the side, there's a tab for contributions, a tab for memberships. Has he been to any events? What emails have we sent? Etc. etc. So it's a really clear, easy to navigate way to look at everyone's individual record. And we'll just take a jump into the next bit, which is the membership area. So that's what we're talking about today. So you can see really clearly here, there's three things going on. And I'm actually going to start at the bottom. The bottom says he's an SSP member, which is the self-service portal. So we know he's signed up and he is using that membership portal. He's also had a first-year membership, which actually has expired, and we're just in the grace period of that. But actually, he's transitioned to the next level of membership, the Heroes of New York. Very happy to have him on board with that. And it's really easy to manage the start dates, the end dates, work out the payments, have they paid, auto renewals, etc. So just wanted to give you a little look into that area. And now I will just also give you the front end look into that self-service members portal. So this is what Tony would see when he logs in. Welcome, Tony. We can see actually his profile is only 80% complete. So there's a little prompt there to remind him to please fill in some extra personal details, which is amazing for organizations to be able to, you know, try and get 100% of the details they want of their members. As Alex mentioned before, there's an area here to see any specific announcements. If there's something very important coming up, you want to make sure to remind them of. You can actually see here, Tony is overdue on a payment. So again, another area to really remind him to pay that membership fee. And of course, we can see some news stories, and at the bottom, upcoming events. And you can configure this to show the things that you want to see. And then again, that left-hand column of tabs where he can go in and see more information, more details. And again, as Alex was saying, this isn't new stuff that you're creating for this portal. This is your news that is going on your websites, going on your blogs, going in your newsletters. The system is able to pull it and put it in there and populate it really easily. So you're repurposing all that content. And you can personalize it where needs be, because this is Tony's space. So he's feeling like he's having a personalized experience. And on the left, you can also see there's a little tab there for invoices, which Alex did also talk about. Very important area if people can control and download their invoices and check their payments and what's coming up. So it's just, you get that real sense of ownership and control as a member, and that personalized experience as well. I think that's probably everything. We're just coming to the end of the session. You know, what we'd like to say is that everybody has different needs and will use the system differently. So we would love to have a chat with you and hear about what you need and how you would like to see the system work for you. And we would be able to do a personalized and tailored demo. So Jack and I will be in touch with everybody after this webinar, or please, you know, feel free to reach out straight away if you'd like to set up a call, or if you have a specific question now. I think we've just got a couple of minutes at the end. And so I think I will move on to the questions slide and say thank you to Alex for a wonderful presentation, and thank you to everybody for joining us. Are there any questions or thoughts? And if not, that's fine, because that means we obviously explained everything. Thank you. Well, thank you all for coming. We will happily hang around a bit longer in case somebody would like to ask a question or share an anecdote, story, thought of the day. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, just lots of thank yous. So yeah.
Yeah, great. Well, we hope this has really been informative and helpful and has sparked some ideas. And of course, we'd love to discuss this further with our existing clients who I know have joined us today, and some potential new clients we'd love to speak to in more detail. And we will be sending around a copy of the video presentation. So bear with us while we put that together, and we will be in touch soon. Thank you very much, everybody.
And we hope everyone from the UK has a pleasant rest of the day and stays cool.
Tries to stay cool.
Tries to stay cool, yes. Great, yeah. And if you have any questions later, just feel free to bring them to us as well. So
great. Thank you, everyone.